Imagine you get up one fine morning and you get to hear the news of an earthquake with a magnitude of 5.1 on the Richter scale. Now, 5.1 is not that much, so it's not going to scare or spread panic, but it is definitely going to cause some concern that the earth is shaking. Now, just imagine minutes later if you learn that this is not natural. It has been caused by a nuclear test. This is exactly what North Korea did a few days back. And this is exactly what caused the world over nuclear friction.
With these joyous words, North Korea declared that it has successfully tested a hydrogen bomb. 2 days before its supreme leader, Kim Jong-un's 32nd birthday. A video released soon after showed Kim Jong-un signing the hydrogen bomb test document, which was approved 3 weeks before the actual launch date. Kim reportedly welcomed the new year with the thrilling sound of a hydrogen bomb explosion. North Korea is calling the device the H-bomb of justice. But its state news agency also said Pyongyang would act as a responsible nuclear state and would not use its nuclear weapons unless its sovereignty was infringed. The impoverished state boasts of its military might to project strength globally, but also plays up the need to defend itself from external threats as a way to maintain control domestically. The test took place at 10 a.m. local time, the DPRK regime said in a televised statement. The seismic event, which measured the event at a magnitude of 5.1, occurred 19 kilometers east-northeast of the previously known nuclear weapon testing site. The underground explosion triggered earthquake monitors around the world and set off alarm bells around the world. Worried about trouble brewing next door, the South Korean Defense Ministry hastily convened an emergency meeting.
북한의 이러한 도발은 우리 모두가 다 아는 것처럼 안보리 결의에 대한 정면의 위반이고.
Japan was next.
국連安保理での対応を含め、米国、韓国、中国、ロシアと
not consistent with North Korea.
The United States of America, although skeptical of the test conducted by Pyongyang, issued a warning.
The United States government to change our assessment of North Korea's technical and military capabilities. Now, I hasten to add that we're continuing to the work necessary to learn more about the nuclear test that North Korea conducted last night.
While there might be no current diplomacy from the US to restrain this nuclear development, this test has put America on the spot. UN Secretary General warned of further sanctions against Pyongyang.
This test once again violates numerous Security Council resolutions despite the united call by the international community to cease such activities. It is also a grave contravention of the international norm against nuclear testing. This act is profoundly destabilizing for regional security and seriously undermines international non-proliferation efforts. I condemn it unequivocally.
In the past, North Korea has tested fission weapons which break large atoms like plutonium into smaller atoms, creating considerable energy. Its first nuclear test came in 2006, after years of posturing and wrangles over the delivery of American aid. The test triggered the first wave of UN-approved military and economic sanctions against the state. Barely a month after North Korea walked out of international talks on its nuclear program in 2009, it carried out its second underground nuclear test, which was said to be more powerful than the first. The sanctions against the state were further tightened, even though the premier, Kim Jong-il, said he was willing to resume nuclear talks. In the early hours of 12th February 2013, unusual seismic activity was detected around the Pyongyang underground nuclear test site. This was to be North Korea's third testing of a nuclear device. Over the years, it has been assumed that North Korea's nuclear capabilities have been a result of its close relationship with China. But the test in 2016 is different. This time, the device is different and the technology more high-tech. Fusion weapons such as hydrogen bombs use fusion to combine small atoms such as hydrogen to create much large amounts of energy. A hydrogen bomb is hundreds of times more powerful than the atomic bomb that devastated Hiroshima in 1945. But even as the world tries to comprehend the result of a hydrogen bomb testing, North Koreans are enthusiastic about the news that their country has carried out its fourth nuclear test since 2006.
Now, India is considered among the most respected as far as the new nuclear powers are concerned. But on those two occasions in history when India actually conducted nuclear tests, it took the world by surprise.
India's first successful nuclear test was codenamed Smiling Buddha. On 18th May 1974 at the Pokhran test range of Rajasthan, India carried out her first nuclear test. Indira Gandhi was the Prime Minister, and it was the first nuclear test carried out by a country outside the 5 permanent members of the Security Council. The world was caught off guard. American intelligence of Nixon era missed it. 25 years later, on 11th May 1998, when Vajpayee government carried out Pokhran 2 tests, again the world is caught unaware.
I have to make a brief announcement. Today, at 15:45 hours, India conducted 3 underground nuclear tests in the Pokhran range. These tests conducted today were with a fission device, a low-yield device, and a thermonuclear device. The measured yields are in line with expected values. Measurements have also confirmed that there was no release of radioactivity into the atmosphere.
We congratulate our nuclear scientists and engineers on the demonstration once again of our scientific prowess. The first Pokhran test of May 1974 was conducted during the Prime Ministership of Srimati Indira Gandhi.
The thermonuclear test, it went through very well. I have reported here.
Pokhran 2 consisted of 5 nuclear detonations. 2 days later, on 13th May, India carried out 2 more detonations at Pokhran. India became overtly nuclear-armed state. Prompt followed the sanctions and condemnations. The sanctions on India consisted of cutting off all assistance to India except humanitarian aid.
India's action threatens the stability of Asia and challenges the firm international consensus to stop all nuclear testing.
Export of certain defense material and technologies were banned, ending American credit and credit guarantees to India and requiring the US to oppose lending by international financial institutions to India. But the Indian government strongly defended its move. Soon Pakistan too carried out nuclear tests, giving rise to a debate on arms race in the subcontinent.
Pakistan's nuclear tests have not come as a surprise to us. These tests have vindicated our policy. They have also confirmed our doubts.
The government has said, the Prime Minister has said, it vindicates the position of the government.
The sanctions had very little effect on Indian economy. Most of the sanctions were lifted within 5 years. Relations with Washington warmed, and seemingly overnight New Delhi received unprecedented rights to civil nuclear trade with the United States. By 2008, a civil nuclear agreement was in force between the two countries, and India had been granted significant trading allowances by key international non-proliferation institutions. India had turned into a nuclear friend.
Now, after India conducted its nuclear tests, Pakistan just couldn't help the urge of conducting its own nuclear tests. And despite the then Clinton government in the United States of America trying its level best that Pakistan should not do so, they could not actually resist that urge to carry out the Chagai nuclear tests immediately after India's Pokhran tests.
Pakistan responded with 5 simultaneous underground nuclear tests on 28 May 1998 after India's Pokhran. Codenamed as Chagai 1, the tests were performed at Raskos Hill in the Chagai district of Balochistan. Pakistan became the 7th nation to test nuclear weapons. 2 days later, Pakistan carried out second nuclear test, Chagai 2.
हम इस बहरान के असरात से उदा बरा हो ही रहे थे कि हमें भारत के एटमी चैलेंज का सामना करना पड़ गया। शदीद आलमी दबाव के बावजूद हमने एटमी धमाके करने का शर्फ हासिल कर लिया।
Chagai tests were condemned worldwide. The UN Security Council adopted Resolution 1172 condemning the tests by both India and Pakistan.
The Security Council strongly deplores the underground nuclear tests that Pakistan conducted on 28 May 1998, despite overwhelming international concern and calls for restraint.
US withdrew its economic aid but continued with humanitarian aids.
I have made it clear to the leaders of Pakistan that we have no choice but to impose sanctions pursuant to the Glenn Amendment, as is required by law.
The possibility of a nuclear war in the subcontinent pushed both India and Pakistan to sign Lahore Declaration of 1999. Both countries reached a mutual understanding towards the development of atomic arsenals and to avoid accidental and unauthorized operational use of nuclear weapons. The international sanctions were eventually permanently lifted by the US after Pakistan became a frontline ally in the war against terror in 2001.
Welcome back. Now, in the present day world, we are all talking about nuclear friction. But I guess all of us do know from where it all began. This then is a recapitulation. In World War II, this was a time when Germany had succumbed, and the Allied forces wanted to do something to take care of the East. And then this happened. Colonel Paul Tibbets had more experience with Boeing B-29 Super Fortress bomber than any other pilot in the American Air Force at the time. The orders had come to drop an experimental bomb on a small city in Japan. A bomb of more than 9,000-pound uranium-235 was loaded aboard a modified B-29 bomber Christian Enola Gay after Colonel Tibet's mother. As they took the flight, no one knew if the bomb would actually explode once dropped. The plane dropped the bomb, known as Little Boy, by parachute at 8:15 in the morning. And it exploded 2,000 feet above Hiroshima in a blast equal to 12 to 15,000 tons of TNT, destroying 5 square miles of the city.
A short time ago, an American airplane dropped one bomb on Hiroshima and destroyed its usefulness to the enemy. That bomb has more power than 20,000 tons of TNT. The Japanese began the war from the air at Pearl Harbor. They have been repaid many-fold, and the end is not yet. With this bomb, we have now added a new and revolutionary increase in destruction to supplement the growing power of our armed forces.
The explosion wiped out 90% of the city and immediately killed 80,000 people. Tens of thousands more would later die of radiation exposure.
Well, as the bomb left the airplane, we took over manual control, made an extremely steep turn to try and put as much distance between ourselves and the explosion as possible. After we felt the explosion hit the airplane, that is the concussion waves, we knew that the bomb had exploded, everything was a success, so we turned around to take a look at it. The sight that greeted our eyes was quite beyond what we had expected, because we saw this cloud of boiling dust and debris below us with this tremendous mushroom on top. Beneath that was hidden the ruins of the city of Hiroshima.
Hiroshima's devastation failed to elicit immediate Japanese surrender. However, on 9th of August, Major Charles Sweeney flew another B-29 bomber, Boxcar, from Tinian, the same base as Colonel Tibet's. Thick clouds over the primary target, the city of Kokura, drove Sweeney to a secondary target, Nagasaki, where the plutonium bomb called Fat Man was dropped at 11:02 that morning. More powerful than the one used at Hiroshima, the devastation was immediate. 40,000 people were annihilated in seconds. At noon on 15th of August 1945, Emperor Hirohito announced his country's surrender in a radio broadcast. While the world celebrated the end of World War II, Japan had not even begun completely understanding the effects of the 2 bombs which would shape both its current and future history. Now, as North Korea cranks up its nuclear installations, the fears that this is going to trigger a nuclear war is only but imminent. The first time around when a nuclear war did happen, when nuclear bombs were dropped, there was very little time for anyone to predict that this is going to happen. But there was another date in history when we came very, very close to a nuclear war. That year was 1962.
조선의 첫 수소탄 시험 완전 성공.
As North Korea cranks up its nuclear intentions, the world witnesses the revival of nuclear doomsday predictions. The first nuclear attack, of course, gave no one any time to make predictions. But the second time the world came close to an imminent nuclear crisis was in 1961, at the height of the Cold War over the Caribbean island country, Cuba.
Fellow citizens, this government, as promised, has maintained the closest surveillance of the Soviet military buildup on the island of Cuba.
This was the 22nd of October 1962. US President John F. Kennedy notified Americans about the presence of nuclear-armed Soviet missiles on Cuba. Just 90 miles from US shores, he declared that US was prepared to use military force if necessary to neutralize this perceived threat. What followed was the Cuban Missile Crisis. But it did not start in 1962, rather 3 years ago. After seizing power in Cuba in 1959, Fidel Castro aligned himself with the Soviet Union. The Soviets saw Cuba's geographic proximity to arch-rival USA as an advantage and pumped military and economic aid into Cuba. This did not go down well with the Americans, who were locked in a Cold War tussle of power with the Soviets. It led to a failed invasion of Cuba's Bay of Pigs in an attempt to destroy Castro's tiny air force. The Soviet leader Nikita Khrushchev saw this as the perfect opportunity to send nuclear missiles to Cuba with the specific goal of increasing USSR's nuclear strike capability. While Castro saw the missiles as a means of deterring further US aggression. The Americans found out when in October 1962, a U-2 spy plane secretly photographed nuclear missile sites being built by the Soviets in Cuba. What followed was a tense 13-day political and military standoff that pushed the world to the brink of a full-blown nuclear war. Kennedy placed a naval blockade around Cuba to prevent the Soviets from bringing in more military supplies. He demanded the removal of the missiles already there and the destruction of the sites. No one was sure how Soviet leader Khrushchev would respond to the demands.
Radio Moscow, Premier Khrushchev.
But leaders of both superpowers recognized the devastating possibility of a nuclear war and publicly agreed to a deal in which the Soviets would dismantle the weapon sites in exchange for a pledge from the United States not to invade Cuba. In a separate secret deal, US also agreed to remove its nuclear missiles from Turkey. 1962 will always remind us as how close we came to nuclear annihilation. That's all the time we have in this special presentation. Thanks very much for watching us right here on India Today. You can also share your feedback, your views, your comments with us on our TV station. And let's hope and pray that this friction does not translate into what is the worst fear of everyone, nuclear doomsday. Thanks for watching.